Hello and welcome. I'm George Churgeon, and today I'm going to be talking about Seneca on his book on the shortness of life. In Latin, it's called De Brevitate Vitae, on the shortness of life. And it's really important because it speaks to us from 2,500 years ago. It speaks to us today because of the volatility that was in Rome at the time that Seneca lived is not dissimilar to the volatility that we're experiencing today with the pandemic and the economic troubles that headwinds that face us. And I think that, for those of us who are in retirement, this is a wonderful way to cast an eye back in order to see forward. So without any further ado, let me share screen. And okay, get rid of this. And we are in play. There we go. On the shortness of life. So who was Seneca? He was born in 4 BC and died in 65 AD. He was there at the time of Christ, interestingly enough. He served under the Emperor Nero, but also Claudius. And I just wanted to also say that he was a Stoic philosopher, a statesman, and a dramatist. Just a brief sort of background on his life. And the reason he wrote this book is because he himself lived in tumultuous times. He was not a very healthy guy. He had issues with his lungs. He later on had tuberculosis. He had difficulty in breathing. And as though the physical challenges weren't enough, he also served under a mad emperor or two who willy-nilly killed people when they displeased him. So by serving an emperor, he was kind of in a difficult position. In fact, he was exiled for 8 years to Corsica for reputedly having slept with one of the emperor's sisters or something, although that's never been totally established. But it was a power play within the palace that got him thrown out. But it was, I believe, the empress who had his life saved because Claudius was going to have him executed. And she said, well, he's not altogether there. He's a sickly boy. Send him away. So they sent him to Corsica. So as you can see, this is a man who was who lived in difficult times, not unlike us today. Now, what others have said about him, Dante Alighieri, the author of the Divine Comedy, says that he was placed alongside Cicero among the great spirits in the Divine Comedy, which I think is a wonderful place to put him. And Mr. Harfan, author of Gratitude and the History of Ideas, says Seneca has been noted as the first great Western thinker on the complex nature and role of gratitude in human relationships. So I believe Seneca had a number of lessons for us, and I'm going to go through each one because you will see as it moves along the wisdom of his Stoic lessons. He tells us to treat time as a commodity. We tend to not really look at time. We tend to mortgage time in order to advance ourselves, not recognizing that time in itself at some points is actually even more important than money. So it's not, it's about knowing where to balance this. And he talks about the non-renewability of time as opposed to money, which is renewable. So do you throw money away? And if not, why do you throw your time away? Given that money can be replaced and we're so careful with money, how come we waste time when it's irreplaceable? Now, conceptually, that's an interesting thought, particularly in retirement, where we have this concept that we need to understand this paradox about time. We might not make it to the end of the day today. On the other hand, we could live up to the age of 90 and beyond, which could take us 25, 30 years out. So it's having these two conflicting ideas about time held in our minds. Money is replaceable. Once lost, time cannot be recaptured. Pretty much what I said earlier on. This is the guts of his concept on time, which, funnily enough, is strange coming from a person who lived at a time when they didn't actually have clocks. And yet he understood more about time than we do today, with all the science that we have behind us. Secondly, obviously time is an irreplaceable commodity. I put this particular picture because we always gamble with time. And, it's fine gambling with money because it's replaceable up to a point, of course. But time is irreplaceable. Once you gamble it away, it's gone, never to come back again. The second lesson is don't invest your time preparing for life, which is what we do, don't we? In our culture, we're always preparing. Live your life now in the present. Now, obviously, preparation is important. There's no doubt about that. But live your life now. Live in the present. And this is difficult for us. And I myself have struggled with learning how to live in the present moment, to enjoy the present moment. I've always looked at either the past or the future. As an Aquarian, that's what I do. The happiness does not lie in the future. And your happiness is not in your control. We can only live life one moment at a time, and you can only live it once. So in other words, we need to value our lives moment by moment. So everything that we do, even now as I am doing this webinar, I'm enjoying myself. I'm trying to enjoy and extract joy out of the work I do and enjoy it at the same time. Now, lesson number 3 is live life for your own self. Old age and white hair does not mean a life lived long. Isn't that great? So many people with gray hair and, they look like they've lived their lives, but they haven't really lived. They've existed. And this is the difference, how so many of us literally exist. We're not living life the way it should be lived. Again, same concept. Being busy with things we don't like is the greatest distraction from living. Now, how many of us do that? I know I've done that, and sometimes I do it again. But when I become aware of it, I stop myself. And if there are things I don't like doing, I farm it out. I don't want to be wasting my time doing things I don't like. Now, on the face of it, that sounds like irresponsible, but it's not really. I think, when you reach retirement age, you've already done all the things you don't want to do because of the things that you do like to do. But it comes to a point where, you know what, with the reduced energy levels, reduced time that we have, we need to focus on what we love to do. And that's important to keep in the top of mind. And create a life you love living. Living and existing are two different ways of life. The vast majority of people on this planet are existing. And in the poorer parts of the world, they're not even existing. They're subsisting. So living a life when we have the privilege of living a good life, and not just for ourselves, but to benefit others. It's about service, and that's where the joy comes in. Seneca lesson number 4 is practice premeditatio malorum. This is an idea that's not actually used very much here because it's considered negative, but it's worth just looking at this and considering the premeditation of the evils and troubles that might lie ahead, right? We try to cover that with insurance, obviously, but not everything is insurable. But it's a form of negative visualization for self-preservation. And if you lived in Rome at the time of Seneca, you would be certain to be concerned about what evils could sort of come up on you unexpectedly. And so you kind of need to be prepared for this sort of thing. In the world today that we live in, where post-pandemic, they're going to be, if you like, waves of change coming at us. We need to be aware that we need to be adaptable, and we need to be in a mode of self-preservation, but without being negative about it. It's just being aware and having the necessary wherewithal to deal with it so that we don't get agitated. And quite rightly, it helps us prepare for life's inevitable setbacks. And then, of course, expect to have a successful and pleasant day, but just be ready in case it isn't. I think it's an interesting mindset. It's something that I would have resonated with about 20 years ago, less so today, but I think it's still something worth keeping top of mind. Lesson number 5, make long-term rewards immediate. This almost sounds like manifestation. Procrastination is the biggest waste of life. I've never actually heard it like that, but Seneca puts it beautifully. It snatches away each day from our lives and denies us the present moment. The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy. Now, this I'm very familiar with. I always lived for decades with this expectancy. When I get to some place, when I have that house, I'm going to be happy. Or when I achieve this objective, I'm going to be happy. Well, clearly, whenever I did reach those objectives, I wasn't happy because something new came in. And you need to go back to base. Why is that the case? Why is it that when we achieve something or we get something that we want, why is it that we become discontented and we have a new objective comes into place? So we're never satisfied. We're never contented with what we have. And the reason is it's our state of mind. In a sense, Seneca probably would not have been aware of this, but it is a state of mind to live in the present moment and to enjoy the present moment. Yes, plan out there, but don't make it don't make it an obsession. Live in the present moment because that's all we've got. There is no such thing as a past and a future in reality. All we have is the present. And the past was a present when we were there, but it's no longer a present because we've moved. And the future is a present time, but we haven't got there yet. If you see what I mean, the present is all we've got. And I love the word mortgaging. Expectancy is mortgaging our today for a future that may never come. And this is where, when it comes to retirement and pension planning, you've done your pension planning. You can't kill yourself to create a pension plan that is an impossible reach. And so you can't mortgage your today to achieve something it's still not going to get you to where you want. It's a future that's not going to come. So live in the present moment. Have a purpose in your life, and you will get to that future because you won't have to worry about it. Lesson number 6. Make the most of your free time. It's not that we have a short time to live, it's that we waste so much time. I don't know about you, but I think I have wasted a lot of time, but not necessarily badly. For example, in my youth, I did waste a lot of time, but we didn't have the pressures that Gen X and millennials have in terms of having to study all the time to make exams and to reach here and to reach there. A lot of them, I don't think, really enjoyed their youth. Whereas, we kind of used our free time to recreate instead of just leisure. It was recreation. Anyway, We work hard for money and for our free time. What do we then do with our free time? Right? We don't waste money. We try not to waste money, although some of us do from time to time. It's normal. But we try not to waste money. But we do waste time, our free time that we've paid for. We squander it on irrelevant things. And that's something worth thinking about, particularly in retirement. What are we wasting our time on? What are we doing with our time? Why do we take it for granted that, I've retired now, I've got all this free time, I'm going to do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want? Really? Notionally, it sounds really good, particularly if you've been working all your life at a job you hated. I can understand that. But if you've relatively enjoyed your work, what you've done, why would you then think that doing nothing is going to give you that satisfaction? It's not. It's going to bring forth all forms of illnesses, particularly mental illnesses. When you talk about shame, isolation, loneliness, disengagement from people, because that's where it leads to if you're not engaged, if you're just into yourself. So, lesson number 7 from Seneca: spend time reflecting on your past. That's what I call doing an audit on your life. And I think it's important to do an audit on our lives because we kind of need to go back and see, all the crises and opportunities that happened in our lives. It gives us a sense of one of the ways to go forward is to actually go back first, tread over the back, look at the life you led, the trajectory that you've been on. And, you've had challenges that you've faced in your life, as we all have. And there've been ups and downs. And it's good to go back and do an audit to remember and reflect on it. I love this one. Life is short and anxious for those who forget the past, which you do if you don't audit your life, neglect the present and fear the future, which is really effectively summed up what retirement is. Pay attention to our past. Remember the lessons of the past so we can become more effective today. This is something worth looking at because when one looks at the crises and opportunities in our lives, in my case, what I discovered was that every crisis in your life is a platform for a new beginning, a new opportunity. And in retirement, there is a sense that it is a crisis because it's a crisis in the true sense of the word. It's a turning point. And so, as Carl Jung would say, what was true in the morning of life becomes a lie in the evening. What was true in the morning of life becomes a lie in the evening. So we need to understand our past before we move forward into retirement, which is a kind of a third age of our lives. And it might last longer than our working life. So introspection does the soul good. The past helps us define who we are today, how far we've come, and who we want to be going forward. And here I'd just like to add that in retirement, it's kind of like retirement knocking on your door saying, time's nearly up. Have you done what you're supposed to do? Right? Because most of us have done things that were expected of us, particularly baby boomers. Although we've always been the rebels that broke out, just check back in the 60s and look at the changes that have happened in the world as a result of the baby boomer generation. Because there's this massive growth. The baby boomer generation was so large. The increase in births after World War II created this massive surge in all areas of life, suburbia, civil rights, and so on. And it changed the dynamics of life. And in a sense, baby boomers are now coming to retirement, and we're going to upend retirement completely because it's the old model is unsustainable, it's broken. So we have to create a new way of going forward, and just plodding on as though it's just a continuation of our previous life isn't going to cut it. We need a whole new mindset. So this is why going back to define our past, who we are today, how far we've come, and where we want to be is so crucial. Introspection is good for the soul. I always like to add pictures in here because it kind of reinforces the message of what Seneca is trying to say. Lesson number 8, stop wasting time on life's trivialities. Social media is optimized to consume our time. Now, I know in my business of helping boomers to unretire and create a new life of purpose, passion, potential, I use social media, but I have only certain windows in which I work on that, and I farm it out because I don't want to be dealing with this all the time, because I know how much time it consumes. I'm also aware of life's trivialities because, as I've explained in previous webinars, but if you haven't heard, I'll sort of briefly say it again. I had a near-death experience. For 3 weeks, I thought I was told that I was going to die from a bone tumor, and I had 6 months to live. And it's amazing how you recognize that, like in my case, I've been pursuing life's trivialities, and I've not been focusing on what's really important to me. And that's because I was listening to people outside, wasn't listening to myself, wasn't listening to my inner self. That's really what this is about. It's about turning inwards. There's a universe inside that we're totally unaware of. We're looking for approval and validation outside us. We don't need that. We don't need permission anymore. The people from whom we require permission are long dead and gone. They've lived a life that belonged in the past. They don't have the map to show us the way forward. We are the ones who've got to create the way forward. So when people come to us all day asking for money, we'd tell them where to go, wouldn't we? This is just beautiful. It's amazing how we're so protective of our money, right? But we squander our time. We just hand it to people. Now, for those of us who are of Christian background, people have an issue with this, that, love your neighbor as yourself concept. But I personally believe that this isn't about that, because that quote, love your neighbor as yourself, if you actually look at it, it's a balanced equation. Love your neighbor is the first part. As yourself is the second part. So my question is turned on its head. If you don't love yourself, how can you love your neighbor? If you don't love yourself because you squander your time, right? I'm not saying don't help people. Of course, you should help people. It's important to help people, but you need to have a balance, because you need to help yourself first. When you're on a plane, they tell you to buckle up first before you buckle up anybody else. It's the same concept. Devote time to yourself. Fill your time with activities that support your life vision, right? Remember, we can't do everything. We've got to be very selective about what we do, and we do that well. And everybody else does the same. We'd be in a great world, wouldn't we? A little bit like when we go to a buffet lunch and you see all the food spread out. I haven't seen any lately, obviously, because of COVID, but you see all these plates of delightful and delicious food spread out. Our eyes are glazed with greed for wanting to eat as much, all of it, but we can't. I found a tactic around this is to go around that table twice. The first time, to have a look at all of your favorite ones, only your favorite ones, avoid everything else. And the second time you go in, you select your favorites of your favorites, and you end up with the plate that you really want. And in a sense, that's what living, avoiding life's trivialities would be a way to go. Lesson number 9, invest your time creating new memories. I totally love this because as a sentimental person, I always tend to look back at the wonderful days. And what happens is that it's a trap, because if you're always thinking about the good old days, there are no new days ahead of you because you're living in the past. And it's our memories. Now, memories are a very tricky thing, very slippery things, because invariably they're not always correct. And because we kind of tend to airbrush memories to suit our purpose and our feeling. And there's an emotional molecule, I believe, attached to the memories that we hold. Because if there was no emotional molecule attached to the memory, we wouldn't have memory of that memory. There'd be many experiences we've had, millions of experiences we've had in our lives. Why is it that we remember some and not others? The ones we remember is because it's tied in with our emotion. It's our emotion that maintains it and keeps it in storage, as it were. So we invest our monies to obtain maximum return. So why don't we do the same with our time? Again, you see the money and time equation. We invest money. Why is it that we don't invest time? Isn't that an amazing concept that we kind of completely dismiss? We should invest our time wisely by creating new memories. This is a man talking this 2,000 years ago. Today we have teachers talking about manifestation, how to manifest things and bring it into the present moment, right? And the only way to do that is to create pictures in your mind, and emotionalize them. And I talk about that in my program. Memories of life experiences deliver more lasting happiness than things, and they shape who we are. So true, isn't it? Memories that have emotion attached to them shape who we are. The events may not have been anywhere near what we think they were, but as far as we're concerned, that's the reality that's within us. That's the reality that we believe. That's the reality that shapes us. So create new memories by creating new challenges and spending time with people you love. And this is what Carl Jung was talking about. What was true in the morning of life becomes a lie in the evening. So we need to find what is true for us in the evening of life. Create new challenges, not retire. You have plenty of time to retire in eternity, but on this planet, there are only two ways to go. You're either growing or dying. Which one do you want? There is no retiring. Next, lesson number 10, invest your time in philosophy. Only those who make time for philosophy are really alive. Keep a good watch over your lifetime and annex every age to yours. What does he mean by annex every age? He's talking about read or learn about what people did in the past. An example would be what I'm doing now with Seneca. I'm annexing the age of Seneca to my age, to our age. So in a way, it's kind of adding to what we, to our lives by having experienced what this man experienced over 2,000 years ago. Philosophy is the only worthwhile occupation of the mind and spirit. Well, I wouldn't disagree with that totally, but I wouldn't agree with it totally either. But it's definitely a top of mind. Reading book condenses time and adds to your time. This is so true. And this is actually one of the reasons why I've done doing these series of advice from the ancients is because I am trying to condense time and add to your time. Because if you know what the ancients were doing in volatile times, it adds to our arsenal of thoughts of how to resolve issues in our lives. Reading philosophy enriches your life, will certainly enrich my life. And last words from Seneca is, you can only live one moment at a time, and you can only live it once. I think that really captures it all, doesn't it? Living in the moment. Plan all you like, but live in the moment. Just drop this out. I hope you've enjoyed this session on Seneca, on his on the shortness of life. I think it's been very helpful and beneficial to me, and I wanted to share it with you because I thought you would benefit from it. We will have 1 or 2 more of the advice from ancients, so please hang in there, and I hope you've enjoyed this. Thank you very much, and goodbye.